Hey guys, I just wanted to talk about my server and what I'm doing with it and what you can do with it. And first, let's talk about a little bit of the hardware that I'm using. So I'm currently using an ML ProLiant, HP ProLiant ML350 Generation 6 server. This is what it looks like. It's currently rocking a Intel Xeon Process 5650 at 2.66 gigahertz. The server can take an additional CPU socket, so I can effectively have two CPU sockets. I'm running 34 gigs of RAM per socket and with a grand total of 64, which is pretty impressive, but you need that with ZFS because ZFS, which I'll go into later, requires a lot of RAM, and I'll explain why later. So let's talk about what I'm using this for. So this is what's called a Type 1 hypervisor, and which means it is a bare metal hypervisor. So how this works is you'd have your your hardware layer, which is your motherboard and stuff. You'll then on top of that have your operating system, and in this case it is VMware. So VMware can be used to virtualize other operating systems. So as you can see here, I have a Windows server. Well, it is a Windows server, but a Windows virtual machine. I have a Debian virtual machine, Open Media Vault, and FreeNAS. These are all running in parallel with each other. So let's talk about the first server that we got here. So this is FreeNAS. FreeNAS is truly an amazing piece of software. They've got a new interface which has been beginning of last year. Well, it's very nice to use and very stable. So I'm currently rocking 5 terabytes of storage in a ZFS pool in RAID 0. So what that means is very fast read and write transfer speeds, and how that works is when I want to put a piece of information or piece of data onto a hard drive, how it does is it pulls the hard drives together, and like P-O-O-L, and then when I put a piece of data on here, it's going to split them up into each of the hard drives. So what that means is when I want to pull something back, instead of pulling a whole file from an individual hard drive, it will pull a piece of it from each of the hard drives and then reassemble them when you need them. So that would mean really fast read and write speeds, because you're only having to read per disk a portion of the information. One of the problems with this is where RAID 1 comes into the equation. So RAID 1 is redundancy. So basically I could say I could have another disk here, which would be the RAID 1 disk. And there's really cool maths behind how it works. So basically how it works is it calculates all your disks information and puts up like a grand total. This redundant disk is basically the antithesis of that singular piece of information. So how it works is if this drive here conquered out, this drive here would would calculate what these values are, and then it would construct what it needs to be. So that's how ZFS RAID 1 works. It's really, really cool, and it's very expensive to do. But it means you got like some redundancy. I'm not using it, but it's pretty cool. I've got an older form of redundancy which seems to work for me, but I'll talk about that later. I'm currently rocking 2 Ethernet cards in here, and I'll talk about that later. But the 10 gigabit. So if we go to interfaces, I have my normal internet adapter, which is just 1 gigabit, and then I've got my 10 gigabit Mellanox adapter. And that thing is fast. I use FreeNAS mainly for storaging and pooling. So if we go to storage and pools, my pool is called Saturn. I don't know why, I just think that's cool. And you effectively make like data folders that you can share out to Windows or other devices, and I'll sort of explain a bit how that works. I'm currently sharing. What am I sharing? I'm currently sharing NFS shares, and I'm sharing SMB shares. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, why am I sharing 2 things at once? Like, there's no point for me to do that. And the reason for that is Docker, and I'll explain a bit about that later when we get to it. This is basically how I use my FreeNAS setup. I can actually virtualize machines inside of this, which is pretty cool. A bit like how this virtualizes FreeNAS. Inside of FreeNAS, I could virtualize like Windows or something else if I really wanted, but you're just creating overhead over overhead, if that makes sense, if you keep doing that, so there's no point. FreeNAS I would give a top 10 out of 10. It's pretty cool. There's some advanced features that I don't really know how to use, such as like jails, which is an alternative equivalent of Docker's, but it's a bit nastier and a bit harder to set up, and a little bit. You gotta know your stuff to know how to do it. But there's a whole plethora of things you can have, such as like, well, I'll just go through them, like a Deluge, which is like a torrenting, it's a little bit like Kubertorrent. GitLab means you could host your own Git repositories privately, of course, so then you could find a way to port forward to the internet, so then you could, if you have any projects that you wanted to do on GitLab, you could have them in your own local server cloud, which is pretty cool, which is something I want to set up eventually. If you got MineOS, I guess that's just a just a bunch of tutorials. Nextcloud is something I want to set up, that's so I can access all my files over the internet securely. Kubertorrent, something I use, but I don't use it here. There's a whole bunch of things. Resilio is really cool. I like Resilio, and Synthing, something I'm using. But so there's like some like default plugins here. There's not like a whole lot, but it's a good start for just basically just click and install sort of things. I have some issues with that. If you've got two Ethernet adapters ported through this, then you might have some issues, but other than that, it's pretty good. I've had about 0 issues with FreeNAS. It's really stable, and I find that it's pretty much got everything you need to basically set up like a little home network server. I'll talk about that a bit now. So I'm going to use my 10 gigabit Ethernet adapter to access this. But if we go to sharing, and we go to SMB, I can access all those files that are on there. So if we wanted to go to software, I can go to tools, and then here's all my stuff. So data recovery wizard, and so it's a good place to store information, and transfer speeds are, for this particular setup, very quick. Like, we're talking like 400 megabytes quick per second. So that's pretty cool. So this is a really good way to store information. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, if I've got FreeNAS and that's working well, and I can pretty much just do whatever I want with it, why am I using OpenMediaVault? And that's a good question. Now, to put that into a TLDR, I use OpenMediaVault because Dockers. Now, if you don't know what Dockers is, it's a little bit like a miniature application that you can run with a GUI. Most of the time it's got GUI. And the best part about that is it's pretty easy to set up, and you can set up a whole bunch of things. So we'll go into OpenMediaVault and how that works. So as you can see, this is OpenMediaVault, and it's not as pretty as FreeNAS, which is one of the downsides, but this is surely a lot nicer than NAS 4 free. The interface to that is just horrible. It needs like a serious update. One of the other reasons I'm using FreeNAS, because I used to use OpenMediaVault for everything. This used to be like my go-to. FreeNAS before this used to have a UI that looked like this. Nope, that, and then we go legacy, continue, go login. This is what FreeNAS used to look like. I mean, it's not as nice as this. This looks pretty good comparatively to this, but like, look at all this. This stuff just looks horrible. Like, that's horrible. But it has iSCSI, and I'll talk about that a bit later. So if we just go there, we just go UI, go back to this beautiful looking UI that we can use. And it's got a few stats here. Memory doesn't work and CPU doesn't work, because I don't know why, but I think it's because it's been virtualized, it doesn't like it. So with OpenMediaVault, so there's actually a few plugins I've got, well, there's actually one plugin in particular I've got installed to help make this work, but it's Remote Mount. So what this does is this allows me to mount NFS shares from FreeNAS into OpenMediaVault and have them accessed as shares, which means I can then access them from Docker. Now let's talk about Docker and what is it. So this is the main reason why I use OpenMediaVault, is because it has a really, really user-friendly interface like Docker, and Docker is really, really good. I really like Docker. It's especially for this. I've tried other versions of Docker like Rancher OS, and it doesn't keep its persistency, so every time I did a reboot it would always reset its settings. So I couldn't afford to, like, if a server crashed and I had some stuff working and it rebooted and I lost all the settings, and say I had like 20 different Docker images set up, then all the data for that would be lost, and I just couldn't have that. That was horrible. And this was the only operating system that I knew, or that I know, that can keep Docker information persistent across reboots. So that's always a super bonus right there. So let's go into a Docker thing. What is it? So example, if we go up to administrator, we go to my Docker containers, MB. So MB is a lot like Plex, or a little bit like Netflix in a way. It's you can host your own movies and stuff, and TV shows, and there's books that I've got, movies, music, TV shows. So it's basically its own little, own little server of such. You might be thinking to yourself, well, I could just download MB for Windows. What's the big idea? Why would you go through all this trouble to put onto a server? And well, they kind of answered your question for you, right? So the reason I have it on my server is because what if I wanted to shut my computer down for the night? It's not doing anything. It's just wasting power, right? With this setup, it means that I could access all my files whenever I wanted. And my server could just remain on, just idling quietly, and I could access anything that I want whenever I want. I wouldn't have to be reliant on having my computer online for it. So Docker is a really cool system. So they're pretty lightweight images for the most part. If we go to the size, okay, they're pretty big, but they're not bad. Like QBittorrent's tiny, something's pretty small. Obviously they're a lot bigger than what you'd have on Windows, but the price to pay for size compared to utility and convenience is, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good comparison price. So one of the main things about using Docker is my backup solutions. So because I'm not using RAID 1, if something on my hard drive corrupted, or a disk got corrupted or destroyed or deleted or something, or overheated and fried and burned, I would lose all my data. I wouldn't be able to access the pool would be inaccessible, and it would be an absolute pain to even attempt to pull information from it, since all the information is stripped across all the drives. So my little backup solution is Syncthing. So this is another Docker container, if you can see here. Actually no, let's first talk about also one of the other benefits of Docker is the ability to set things up really, really easily. So example, say we wanted to set up, what have we got here? Say we want to set up Syncthing. We could run the image, and we could just go host. This is just really quick. But one of the good things about this is if I hit /, it tells me what I need to put in for it to work. And that's really convenient, because sometimes when you look at the documentation, as I'll show you in a sec, if you go to information, so this is Syncthing. So this is documentation for this particular Docker. This is what you need to look at when you're setting one up, and you'll be looking at it going, oh, coding and forward slashes, and why are there backslashes in there, and all this jazz. So one of the things about this particular Docker setup is the ability to basically do all the hard lifting for you. It's good to just check, where are we? Something, here we go. If it requires any GUID or PUID, so that's like your login ID, and if you need any help with that, I can tell you how to do that. It's pretty easy to find that. Close that. Yeah, so you could just, put that in, PUID. Mine is 0 because I'm using root, and plus and blah blah blah. And then also config. So the nice thing about this kind of ties into why I've shared my NFS shares to Open Media Vault, and that's because, say I needed to access the media. Okay, we'll just go that and go, or yeah, actually we'll do. We'll just quickly go. Where is it? Jellyfin. Here we go. So this is actually Docker MB. So it's a form of MB. So if we go to that media, I want to be able to access all my media on my FreeNAS server. So now I can just go down to media, and look, there's all my media stuff, and just hit OK. And that will read and write from it. RO means read only for those if you use it. And that's why I use Docker, because Docker is really easy to set up. Everything's nice and contained. There's no sort of like file integration with Open Media Vault's like systems. It's all done in containers. And that's what's really cool about this. And this is why I'd recommend. There's Docker for Windows. Can be a bit of a see you next Tuesday to set up, but use this. It's just so much more convenient. Why would you want to use anything else? This does literally all the hard lifting for you. Like, if you didn't use this and use like RancherOS, you'll find out how hard it is to set up. It's not fun. So let's talk about my backup solutions for now, and then we'll talk about why I'm using 10 gigabit Ethernet. So the first part is my backup solution. So first thing I created was a Resilio, but that ended up not working so well. I would definitely recommend Resilio for local torrenting between all devices. But at the moment I'm currently using SyncThing, and that's working pretty well for now. So what is SyncThing? So SyncThing is a lot like torrenting. And for those who don't really know what torrenting is the ability to send anything really across to other pairs, essentially. Then the pairs could share it out to other pairs. So it's like one person has a piece of, and it could be a piece of software or something, they could send it out to 2 people. Those two people could send it out to 4 people per person, and then it kind of like goes on from there. So that is that. It's a really easy way to share information out to, not even to the internet, just to other local clients, or other local clients. So a good idea could be like, you could sync up your downloads folder, so every computer would have the exact same downloads. The benefits for that might be is, say I've on my computer here, I download something, and then I want to, take my laptop to school or something. Then I could, put my information onto that. It would automatically load the information onto that as long as the laptop is on, and then I could take it to school. In this case of how I'm using SyncThing, is I'm using it to back up all my data from my server directly to my external hard drive, which is located server backup. Here we go. Ooh, that's never good. There we go. And it backs it all up to this, and this is only like a 2 terabyte or something. So as you can see, I don't have much space left, but there's a lot of files in there. So that's how. So we should sort of explain about how this kind of works and what I'm doing with it. So these are all sent as push. So these are all pushing information out. This one is syncing between both devices. The reason for that is this is going to be syncing up the app data on Windows between all the devices. So I should be able to open up the same application and all the information should already be there, which is really helpful. Another thing that I use is I use SyncThing for Windows to then pull. So I'll just bring that up real quick. I'm just using Always Up. This is a really good way to start programs when, just go cancel and go play. A really good program to start applications up when your computer boots up. So if there's stuff that, like a servers or something that need to be booted up, then it can be easily done. Okay, SyncThing has been started. I'll just click on that real quick. Okay, we'll just go 127, since I already know what the address is. So this is my Ryzen PC SyncThing. If we actually go if we just cancel this real quick, if we just go, where's the open file location? Is there something like that? If we just stop that real quick. Cool, so that's cancelled. I'll just quickly access the actual files for my server, which is software, tools, cloud, SyncThing. Here we go. So when you download SyncThing, it's going to be standalone. Somehow the normal installer doesn't work. So I'll just close that. The normal installer doesn't work and it'll crash saying stuff isn't working. Where's all my stuff here? It's stupid. Yeah, so that's what that does. This is what it's going to look like, and this is standalone. So this is currently working off my network, because I can. Why not? I might as well have everything running off my network if I can help it, because it means, because I don't have that much like storage, or at least fast storage on my PC. I mean, I think I've got like 4 hard drives installed, but yeah, my C disk, my secondary drive, games backup, server backup, that's my external hard drive, and this one here is my iSCSI device, and I'll talk about that in a sec when I talk about how I back up my stuff. So yeah, this just does the do, and always up will make sure that this will always boot up when your computer boots up. And so this is all set to pull, so this will always pull all the information from the server. These push, my computer pulls, and so that means I can then select. It's all done on the G drive, so I think when you add the folder, it's going to tell you what location do you want to save it in, and I've saved it to the G drive, which is in here. So that's how I back it up. One of the other things I use for backing up is, well, one of the reasons I use FreeNAS is iSCSI. So what is iSCSI? iSCSI is a way of, in my application, of Windows creating a virtual disk. Windows sees it as a legitimate disk, like a hard drive, but it's tethered across the network to my server. And so the reason you might be thinking, well, why don't you just install all your stuff to the server? And the reason I can't do that is because some applications, well, such as Origin games, Steam won't let you do it without some caveats, and Blizzard Entertainment games or whatever, their store thing won't let you do it either. There are some workarounds. One of them is instead of creating a network location, you can map a network drive and assign a letter. Some Windows Explorers will allow you to access this and then save stuff to it. Most of the time it might not, especially for games and stuff. One of the downsides to using a mapped network drive is it won't connect to your computer when you boot up. So these two here I mounted, Z, and I think this one is T. These will not mount when you boot your computer up. They'll like just be dismounted, but they'll still be there. So you have to just click on them to mount them. And one of the downsides is if you have, like, say, a torrenting software that will torrent straight to, say, software, or maybe downloads, it will never do that until you click on the downloads mount to then connect, like, make that connection happen. So I was looking at a way to make sure I could always access my servers as soon as my computer boots up. And so that's part of the reason why I'm using iSCSI, because Windows sees it as a legitimate disk, so I can install stuff to it, and I'm installing stuff to it which is effectively on the network. So effectively I could have a 5 terabyte hard drive here if I wanted. Oh, also nice thing about iSCSI is you can also increase the storage. So this one is what, 550 gigs, but in FreeNAS, I could then just add more storage, like just increase the gigabytes on it, and then I could just then go into, if I just go into the partition, I could then expand the partition. And so it's as simple as that. It's actually really easy to use and set up. It's click a few things. If you guys need help with setting up an iSCSI in FreeNAS, I'm more than happy to help you out. There's stuff out there, but you know, I'm a GC and all that, so you know. That's why I use iSCSI for my drives. Also, something else I'm going to be doing is backing up my server game library to my games backup folder. I'm going to be using probably a program called GoodSync to do that, because I can't. There's nothing on my network. There's no Dockers that I can use to really do that. It's more of like a Windows side thing. Unless I make a Windows share and then do it that way, kind of like do it in reverse order. That could work, but it's a little bit horrible. Yeah, I might do that. One of the downsides with using an iSCSI, if we just go to FreeNAS and then we go to storage, my pools, pools. One of the down things about this is if we go to games, this is a ZVol, not a dataset. I can share datasets, and I could share. This won't appear inside the dataset if I did share it, and that's kind of the downside. Is I can't access this as a share, so I can't be like, oh okay, let's back up everything in my games iSCSI drive. I can't do that. It's mounted as is, so that's kind of one of the downsides about it. But there will be like a work around that, but it's not pleasant, but it'll work. You know, I like to keep all my game stuff backed up if I can. That's my backup solutions at the moment. So let's talk about my 10 gigabit Ethernet connection. So what is it, and why do I have it? So yeah, let me just demonstrate why I use 10 gigabit instead of 1 gigabit. So if we go to here, and if we So we'll just connect to my 1 gigabit. So we'll just go like that, we'll just go like that. Backslash to 1.5. Call this slow network. We'll open it. So this is exactly the same hard drives and stuff. If we go to medium, we go to movies. We'll just go to my documents. Yeah, we'll go to we'll just chuck in here. So we take 10 things I hate about you, and we paste that in there. Okay, so you think yourself, oh yeah, 100 megabytes. That's pretty good. Like, that's some pretty good read-write speeds. But it won't go any higher than 112 probably. Which kind of sucks, because you're kind of thinking, well, what if there's like, you know, it's fast, but 10 gigabit is certainly faster. So if we just delete that, oh, come on. Oh, why is it moving? Cancel. Don't do that. Okay, so if we just go to say my pictures, and we access this from the 10 gigabit, which is this one here. We go to media, and then we go to movies, and then we go to 10 things I hate about you. Copy that, and we paste that in there. Boom. I am using a solid state hard drive as my main PC HD hard drive, but that was fast. There was no bottlenecks in reading speeds, as long as you got a computer's hard drive to, you know, have the same amount of speeds. But that is incredibly fast. That is 10 gigabit speeds. That was me transferring a movie in like, what, 3 seconds, I think. So I think that's pretty impressive. You know, I think that's really cool. One of the only downsides to my setup is the backup bottleneck, and what that is I can read and write stuff from my server to my computer really quickly because I'm using solid state, and you know, it's pretty quick. The only downside is my server backup, which is my external hard drive, has really slow read and write speeds, and I'll demonstrate that by copying this over. You know, this is from the 10 gigabit network, but it's only clocking out at like 30 megabytes a second. So there's a massive bottleneck. And what I think it might be is the controller between the actual hard drive and the USB adapter. Essentially, it is the USB adapter between the SATA and your computer. I reckon that is really slow and shitty. Like, this should be like USB 3 is meant to be clogging around like what, 70 megabytes a second. But I'm getting 30. Like, there's something weird happening here. It should not be going this slow. And this is one of the downsides. So one of the reasons I had my 10 gigabit means if my server crashed and I needed to do a restore, that theoretically would have been quite quick, because I could just grab all the files from my server backup external hard drive and plonk them all onto the server. But yeah, as you can see, this is incredibly slow. So I'm not going to finish that because who cares. But yeah, so that's pretty much my server setup in terms of what I've done with it and how it works. I'm pretty happy with it for the most part. It's pretty easy and pretty convenient. I can watch movies on any device in the house. I can do anything. There's heaps of like bandwidth room, which is really nice. Also, one of the reasons I have this set up, so there's a direct connection between my computer and my server, and that's where the 10 gigabit comes in handy. So the reason for that is I could run all my games off my 10 gigabit network, because the read-write speeds are really fast. I could then have internet running as well. Basically, the TLDR is there's a lot of network bandwidth available for me to do a whole bunch of things at once. So I could, you know, this is the data that is being used for recording, so I can record stuff, and there's a bit back here, there's like a massive spike on information, so there wouldn't be many bottlenecks or any lags. Which is really nice, and that was the whole point of it, is to make sure that things that I need on my computer and my server could be accessible really quick and very fast. And for the most part, it works very well, I think. Obviously there's a few tweaks I need to do about my slow hard drive, because if I could get this backing up at 400 megabytes, I could effectively back all the stuff up to my server in like a couple of hours, instead of it taking like a whole day. Literally, it will take like a whole day to transfer 2 terabytes at that speed. Especially for smaller files. Smaller files are horribly and notoriously bad for transferring at really low transfer speeds. But that's just how it is at the moment. In saying that, Linus Tech Tips, they did might have been a 40 gigabit transfer, and they managed to get like text documents and stuff like transferring at 1 gigabyte a second, which is phenomenally impressive. That's pretty much it for me. So that's pretty much my setup. I've put many hours into like getting this working correctly, getting FreeNAS and OpenMediaVault to talk to each other in the way that they do, getting Docker to work correctly and have all the information saved directly on my server. Something else I would also like to talk about, which is another side project, is my Quechua Media Wiki. So this is, I have instructions for this if you guys want to set this up, but this is basically a wiki page that you can make and create and put stuff on. And you might be thinking to yourself, well that's, I guess that's cool, why would you want that? Reason one that I think is really awesome is the ability to link things to each other really quickly. So the idea is I could click on Huawei. Oh, there we go, I've got one Huawei device that's mine. Well, it's actually my partner's, but you know, I can document things really easily and really quickly. Obviously this page hasn't been created, so if we just go to MediaWiki, this is a page that I've created on installing MediaWiki, as well as a plugin which is called Visual Editor, which allows me to visually edit stuff that's on the wiki page, which is really cool. And also this, like, if I didn't have that, I'd be using source editing, and this is what it looks like, and it's pretty horrible. I don't like it, but I put a lot of time and effort into making sure that the visual editor does work, as well as works on reboots. It's using a thing called Parsoid.js, I think it's called, but don't quote me. I'll look into it. There we go. Node.js, but it's also using Parsoid. But this is really cool. So this is a really good way to document things and link things. So if we go to OMV, OpenMediaVault, you can document things about things that you've done. You know, you could OpenMediaVault, like blah blah. So this is like commands just for OpenMediaVault. If we go to SMB, we have one for service message block, and some commands there. What about ADB? And we'll go to that one there. So there's some ADB commands. This is for Android, so I can like put ROMs into my phone. What else is it? So there's a really good way to like link stuff. You can click on it, it will take you down to the page. But yeah, it's really cool. I really enjoy that. You can also like change your logo and stuff like that. You can also change the little logo that's up there as well. But yeah, so that's something else I just wanted to note, because this took me a really long time to set up. But I'll probably do a YouTube video on actually how to set this up, because I think it'd be pretty useful for some people that are that way inclined to have their own sort of like server for managing information and data. Yeah, so I think it comes to the end of my video, and thanks for watching. And if there's any other questions or anything that you like to ask me, or have any queries, just let me know. Cheers, and thanks for watching.